Hello and welcome to Beyond Top 10 Tennis. My name is Dr. Ashley Morgan-Berge and I'm your host. I'm the author of 12 books, a CEO of 13 years, founder of a startup set on data privacy, most importantly, an elite performance coach of over 19 years, having worked with athletes throughout Europe, the United States to Australia. Most excitingly, I am the world's leading scientist on coach and athlete performance, specifically behind how to develop a top 10 tennis ranking. My work includes everything from mitigating injuries to conditioning behaviors that set a player up long-term for the long game towards a top 10 tennis ranking. I'm behind theories from the optimal performance theory, optimal behavior for optimal performance, the barrier breaker, the rule of transference to the golden rule. As has become custom, each episode we dive into the latest rankings and results on the WTA and ATP tours and deliver new data implications as shared in my latest release, How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking, with over 80 episodes to date. Today's insights and key topic plays its own role, like so many other episodes, in developing the player, parent to coach for that road ahead towards a top 10 tennis ranking. So, as always, buckle in and enjoy the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, if you've been with us for some time now, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. If this is one of your first episodes tuning in to Beyond Top 10 Tennis, I really would encourage you to track back to some of our early episodes, around say 50 to 60, to really get a feel from where we've been, where we've been going, but I think most importantly to establish, I think, those really solid foundations that we keep building on. But look, if you're tuning in now, thank you so much. If you are unsure of any concepts or key topics, then by all means, please do track back or have a look at our blogs directly on AIMA International to really catch up to speed, because they really are incredibly valuable, and oftentimes they share new insights that aren't always discussed in each episode, but really I think are profound extensions to help you, irrespective if you are that athlete, that player, that coach, or parent for that matter, to better ascertain the data, the insights, the rankings, the results, where we're going, and really the applicability to your own game. And look, today's episode is going to be really jam-packed. Last week we celebrated 1 year of Beyond Top 10 Tennis, so we didn't have a chance to dive into the latest rankings and the results from Madrid. So we really want to wrap that up, and we know that Rome is very heavily underway in the later half of the tournament with some really exciting matches going on. But we also have some smaller events that have been underway over the past, say, 2 weeks. So we're going to just touch on them briefly. But we're going to dive in first and foremost, top 200 rankings this week. Quite quickly, say 200 to 100, really just looking at some key players' progressions on both sides. And then we'll dive into the later half of Madrid before heading back over to Rome. We'll start with the WTA Tour and then switch to the ATP Tour to really, I think, dig deep, because there's some very interesting, I think, correlations that have unfolded in the last fortnight, and we need to get up to speed with that, especially with the French now, I think, roughly 2 weeks away. But I think also we've had over the last, say, 2 to 3 weeks, let's say the official retirement of Muguruza. Thiem is going to hang his racket up. Cornet is going to hang her racket up. And I'm sure there's someone else there in between. We know how Nadal's been tracking this season, potentially his last. There's nothing, I think, really concrete. I think the latest comment was around 98% certain that that's probably the case. So we have had a couple of players, let's say, hang up their boots this season who are planning to. And also at the French, but more so we've had some newcomers that we're going to touch on, from the likes of Osaka coming back, Wozniacki coming back. I'm going to mark Badosa as well, coming back kind of because she has been off. We know Svitolina's been in action for some time after that period off, and there are some other players as well that have had that time off and come back. We know Halep's back in action. I think it's this week coming. I'm not sure how that's going to play out for the French, or if she's been granted a wild card. I'm sure we'll soon find out. But there are some, I think, some, let's say, interesting movements across the tennis landscape and what's been going on, I think, on that side, which really doesn't have anything to do with key performances. So we've got some really, I think, niche performances and their corresponding metrics to touch on, because they're really pivotal, I think, for all of you out there who are looking for, I think, those key insights to really take away and consider to even look at applying in your own game. And when we look at the applicability, the application into your own game, that's where we look at the data in the books. So my latest release, How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking, and then track backwards to even the very first book, The Secrets to Optimal Performance Success. And so there's 11 specific, say, non-fiction books in this area between. And by following the pathway, the long game, if you're unfamiliar with that, head on over to AIMA International to dive deeper into that. It's really important to just build those key, I think, inferences into your game, those technical parameters, those key metrics, to build and build and build to progress towards that top 10 tennis ranking. And we have finally also in the last few weeks launched our new website, which essentially is what it was, but it's more heavily on that explanatory nature about what you really need to do, where to start if you're top 500 in the world, top 50 in the world, top 20, or if you are a top 10 in the world, you're looking to secure that maiden Grand Slam, and 50% or more of you, that is the case, where you need to start, what you need to do before, say, picking up the phone and giving me a call, or getting on email and having that discussion with me. So it's really important to understand what needs to be done to begin with. You may be a club or academy player, high performance or a developmental player who's really making some healthy progress, but what you need to do now at this stage of your career, even though it's very early on, you will be in your early teens or mid-teens, and the projections that you're setting yourself up for success in that second decade of play, and how this initial decade of play is really important. So if there are some terms in there you're unfamiliar with, I really want to encourage you to head on over to AIMA International, have a look at some new sections, and our blogs, those articles are getting more and more, I think, impressive in respect to their saturation each and every week. And more often than not, they are all personally written by myself in conjunction with and or to these texts. So there is a lot there for you to access right now. All right, let's head into the WTA Top 200. Let's kick things off. So 200, we've got Ipek Oz, 24-year-old from Turkey, and we're going to track forward now. We do have a number of players who have been regressing quite substantially, but I'm going to sidestep these ones, but when we're specifically in this ranking range. Carole Monet, 22 years of age from France, she's up 16 places to 184. What I like about these key progressions inside this ranking range, we've really got players we can go, okay, are they going to track towards the top 100 and break that initial threshold within the next 6 to 12 months? And when you've got these more significant progressions, they are the noteworthy ones. 185, 17 places up, is also Lucia Srkic Bagaric, 20 years of age from Croatia. And I will say this head on to begin with. If I do pronounce your name incorrectly, which the likelihood is very high, I really do apologize. So please bear with me. All right, tracking forward now, we've got Yizin Ma from China, 24 years of age, she's up 21 places, 177 now. Osaka is the one I really wanted to highlight. She's up 24 places to 173, and she really will progress even further after Rome, because we know how she's been performing as well. But this is a very interesting insight, along with those other players that I've mentioned, who are at these jumps we're talking about, late teens to 20s. But let's remember, Osaka's also only 26 years of age. We know she's got a handful of slams under her belt, and she really has been coming into prime form. I want to say the last 2 weeks, finding a bit more of that rhythm. Potentially will perform at the French. When we're looking at performing, we're looking at potentially that round of 16 result. I would probably gauge that level at this stage, if not an earlier exit, but potentially that round of 16 outcome. Potentially she obviously could go further, but I'm going to say cut that off there, round of 16 at this stage, with how she's been performing. Obviously, in respect to her ranking, we would be looking or talking about qualifying first round, but how she has been playing or has played in Madrid really signals something that has been ignited further in her game, which is a very healthy progression to finish the year inside the top 100. And let's remember, we are not even halfway through the year. Potentially a lot higher. Okay, tracking forwards a bit more, we're verging onto, here we go, 159, Robin Montgomery, 19-year-old from the States, so she's up 24 places. That is a very healthy jump, very similar in that respect to Osaka, although slightly ahead. 39 places up is Boyson, 20 years from France, 152. Other noteworthy plays we're tracking a lot, I think, closer now towards the top 100. We've got very small, I think, progressions. There's a number of regressions going along here, but a few noteworthy players that I wanted to point out was Badosa. She has regressed 25 places to 126. That said, her performance this week, also in Rome, and last week Madrid a little bit, she will be picking up those points again, and I'm quite positive she will break back into the top 100 in a matter of, if not weeks, potentially then the next, say, 1 to 2 months. Let's remember also, she's only 26 years of age, same as Osaka. She has been inside the top 10. However, her metrics at that time suggested she was more susceptible to regress outside the top 10, which clearly was the case. Despite, even though she has been sidetracked with injuries the last, say, best part of the last two seasons, her performance progressions did not correlate with holding on to that top 10 tennis ranking, so that longevity there that we've touched on. having regressed this substantially is really to do with those ailments that she has been, say, managing, overcoming. Her performance, nonetheless, we're looking at progressing towards top 50, top 20 once again, though we're yet to see if that top 10, let's say, is within reach once again. However, if she does integrate all 8 keys, it's a no-brainer. She definitely will, but we're really looking at these metrics within, let's say, the next 6 to 12 months. All right, tracking forward from Badosa, we do have some other noteworthy players, one being Wozniacki. She's at 119, slight regression, 2 places. She's been hovering around this ranking range for some time now, and she hasn't had any noteworthy key progressions to call upon. Other players that we're looking at is Aragano. She's up 3 places, 118 in the world, 23-year-old from Colombia, but she has been progressing. Another player who has recently retired is Georgie, 116 in the world, 32 years of age. She has hung up her boots officially. I believe it was this week, last week, but so she won't be competing at the French. So that was a very subtle adios from, I think, the WTA tour. Uchijima, a 22-year-old from Japan, she's up 20 places, 110. So there's a handful of players now before we get into the top 100. I want to say we've touched on about 6 to 8 players there that are noteworthy. So that is less than 10%, that 8% ruler that we've touched on in previous episodes, inside the top 100 that have been tracking forwards, which is a very significant number because in retrospect, there's 90% or if not a little bit more of players between 100 to 200 in the world that have not been making substantial progressions or tracking towards the top 100 with key milestones. So there's a very significant divide, and this divide is only even more substantial now when we get inside to the top 100. All right, Erica Andreeva, obviously her sister has been progressing quite substantially. She's been hovering around 100 in the world. She has been a little bit higher. She has fallen outside the top 100. Needless to say, she's 19 years of age and has been pretty steady with that performance, but we're yet to see, say, those standout performances, but I'm sure they are to come. Cornet, 99 in the world, has been tracking forward 8 places. Looks like this French Open is going to be her last. Arani, she has been making some very good performances lately. Given clay is her forte, up 7 places, 93 in the world, and let's remember she's 37 years of age. Other noteworthy players within this ranking range, we've got Daria Saville, the Aussie. She has been close, I think, inside the top 30 previously. She's now 84 in the world. She's just been side-railed, let's say, with some injuries of late. So it's really good to see her tracking forward again. Martic is back 19 places, so at 81 in the world. Sheriff, she's back 8 places to 80 in the world, though she has actually been making some very healthy inroads this season. It's also noteworthy to note that the rankings that I'm discussing are last week's because due to Rome, there haven't been any ranking updates this week. That's very important to clarify. All right, tracking forwards now, we've got Maria Lourdes Calle, the Argentinian, 24 years of age, up 11 places, 71 in the world. We've got some key progressions, just minor, and some regressions, very minor. So I'm really looking at, let's say, hopefully bigger jumps. So very subtle here between the 4s, the 5s, the 1s, the 2. Here we go, 8 places. Sarah Sorebes Torma, she has been tracking so far this season, up 8 places, 47 now in the world. Potapova, 23 years of age, she's back 4 places, 43 in the world. Putintseva up 9 places to 41. Mira Andreeva, so her sister's at 100, she's at 40 now. However, after this week, I'm pretty sure she's going to track closer towards 30, but this is a very good ranking range for Mira Andreeva to hover around before, let's say, inside the next 2 to 3 seasons, tracks closer towards the top 20, but at this stage, being 17 years of age, it's a very good ranking range to hover at, to have very healthy plateau. And normally we look at a plateau as counterintuitive, but when you are at an earlier age, we want you to maintain a performance, to get that experience, to get those games under your belt before progressing too soon. We've touched on terms such as rapid fires and those really quick results. Badosa actually was victim to this, even though it was incredibly positive and an incredible achievement. It made her more susceptible to that more profound regression. And there are other players that have succumbed to those rapid fire results. So we really want to safeguard players by saying it's okay within this age range to take your time within reason, but especially when you are at that younger end, let's wait that additional 2 to 3 seasons. Golf is the perfect example. When she hovered around that range, very slowly, quietly progressed inside the top 20 before making her mark. Very important. And now she has that longevity on her side, that level of maintenance. She has the 8 keys integrated into her game. She has a Grand Slam under her belt, all because she was able to pace herself. Very important to really, I think, better ascertain the conversation around that. It's really important, I think, to dive into the 7 keys to optimize your life and my latest release, how to develop a top 10 tennis ranking, but also I think even more so the What Is Your Game Missing series, which is what is your game missing, what is your game missing now, and what is your game missing to win. Really important text to dive into and better understand. Okay, Stevens, it says, is actually back 2 places to 35, but it's actually a progression because Stevens was around 40. She's been making her way 35. Given her recent performances, I would not be surprised to see Stevens back inside the top 30 within the next couple of months. Fernandez, she's up 134. She was inside the top 30. Remember, Fernandez is only 21 years of age. She's made a Grand Slam final before, so I wouldn't be surprised again to see Layla back inside the top 30, maybe even inside the top 25 this season. All right, back into the top 30, we have Noskova's holding strong. Let's remember her performance from the Australian Open, only 19 years of age. Boulter's steady at 28. Krejcikova steady at 27. Former French Open champion. She actually has been tracking backwards in respect to her performance, although her ranking is relatively steady here. Kudermetova's back 6 places, 25 in the world. Azarenka's is up 2, so she's 24 now. Given her results this week, looking forward to Azarenka breaking back inside the top 20 would be very exciting to see. Pavlyuchenkova is up 1 to 21 in the world. It would be really solid to see Pavlyuchenkova break the top 20 again. So the two of them are very noteworthy. And here we have Kostyuk. Remember, the Australian Open set her up for this healthy progression. She's now career high 20 in the world, and look, Navarro experienced the same high only a matter of weeks ago. She's at 22 now and 22 years of age. Kostyuk 21 years of age. She really has been tracking forward this season. So herself and Paolini now are the 2 standout performers from the Australian Open. Other players that we know are noteworthy, and I've touched on previously from the beginning of the season, typically have been holding their own inside the top 30, which is really good to see. Svitolina, 19 in the world. Keys is up 4 places to 16 in the world. And after, I would say this week in Madrid, she's going to even track more so, closer, or hold on around there, maybe closer to say 14, but Rome. So Madrid, reasonable, but Rome, she actually has very good results so far and how deep she's been able to track. Collins, 15 in the world. You've heard me touch on her previously. She is still going strong. Madrid, good. Rome, good. Still in action, still underway. And I get really excited about this because you've heard my data, you've heard my insights, and when it is built upon, it's even better. So it's really good to see. Makova is obviously sidelined. She's not back in action. So Collins really has that room to progress. Haddad Mayer is at 1 at 13. But when we're looking at or contrasting these results, Collins really has scope to leapfrog these other players, which is very exciting given it is Collins against last season on tour. So there's a number of players that are wrapping up their career this season, which is really sad, but on the other side, equally exciting for them to go out with a bang in a really good way. Paolini, she's at 1 to 12. Absolutely sensational again. Standout performer from the Australian Open, as continuously built upon those results. Another career high for her. Kazatkina is very solid ahead at 11 in the world, but she's also on the cusp of potentially progressing inside the top 10. That said, Ostapenko is still holding her own solid at 10 in the world, and she's been keeping up with those performances. Jabeur. Now, she has been performing better than the initial part of this season, which is great to see. However, when we're looking at top 10 performers and making the round of 16 or further consistently, not so much. So she has fallen short in Rome, did track forwards in Madrid, but it's very noteworthy to see. I don't think Jabeur is playing at the level she's been playing the last, say, 2-3 seasons with those Grand Slam finalist results. So let's see if Wimbledon and the US, she really does pick that form up again, but clearly would be great to see her tracking forward for the French, but her current results do not, I think, align with that type of outcome. Sakkari, ironically, is back 2 places, but she probably will hold her own here. Granted that Jabeur is just behind her, so it's a very, I think, healthy range for Sakkari to be at. Potentially will track even more forwards. Zheng, she's at 7. Now let's remember, 21 years of age, has not been living up to that top 10 ranking. However, the last 2 weeks, Madrid and Rome, Rome more so, Zheng has been performing, I think, the best since the Australian Open. So potentially there's something in the water that has reignited Zheng's top 10 level of play, because she has not been delivering that up until now. But now, especially this week, she's been playing some of the best tennis I've seen her play since the Australian Open. So that's a very interesting metric to look for. Vondrousova, she's at 1 place, so she's 6 now in the world. She's been tracking, I'm going to say, okay, somewhat of a baseline plateau. Has she been playing in line with her ranking? Not so much. She has been tracking forward a bit more, which is great to see, but I really want to see more. And I'm being really harsh here because I set, I think, a very significant benchmark for the top 10, especially when we're looking at the likes of Swiatek, Sabalenka, Gauff to Rybakina. Now, we know Rybakina is not playing this week. She did fall unwell, so she doesn't have those points, say, to her name. Pegula has not necessarily been performing, but she's very steady at 5. Gauff, Sabalenka, Swiatek, they are still all in action this week in Rome, and there are some very exciting matchups between two of them, and we know the outcome obviously in Madrid. So those three players are very close, and before the let's say the last week, all four of them were very close, but given the French is only a matter of weeks away now, Rybakina, Gauff, Sabalenka, Swiatek are definitely primed, and I think it would be absolutely sensational to see all four of them in the semi-finals, and if they all four keep tracking how they're doing, they definitely will make that potentially the case, and we have not seen that for some time now. All four semi-finals will be great to see. All right, that wraps up, I think, the WTA Tour. So we're going to go quickly through the second half from the quarterfinals of Madrid. We know the outcome, but let's go over some of these results. So the second half was Ondreeva and Sabalenka, and this is why I'm very confident Ondreeva's ranking is going to progress more so than her current around 40 in the world, close towards the top 30. A very good performance, reaching the quarterfinals at Madrid, but Sabalenka, too good, 6-1, 6-4, very solid. But here we go, Rybakina and Putintseva. This is why Putintseva's ranking has also progressed, but very solid 3 sets. Took the first set from Rybakina, but then it was so 4-6, 7-6, 7-5. That was a standout. All right, semi-finals we did have, and this was really good to see. I think the only one missing here was Gauff, but Keys is in action. And so we know this is why her ranking has also been progressing forward. Sabalenka over Rybakina, 1-6, 7-5, 7-6. Now this is what shows why Rybakina is so close and so deserving of being inside the top 4. Potentially Rybakina actually is placed to be 3 in the world, given Gauff has not been tracking as well as Rybakina this season. That said, because Rybakina is not playing this week in Rome, Gauff, rightly so, is comfortable at 3 in the world. So just Sabalenka is very close with that win over Rybakina. The other semi-final, Swiatek and Keys, that was a clean sweep, 6-1, 6-3. And I think the result speaks for itself, but there's 3 of the top 4 there, which is very exciting to see. All right, so we know the result from the final. This was actually the best I have seen Sabalenka play, I think, since the Australian Open and winning her second Grand Slam. Swiatek 7-5, 4-6, 7-6. And she had championship points against Swiatek. You do not get any closer in a final. This was absolutely sensational. I watched some of the highlights here, and both of these players towed the line. So irrespective how well Swiatek has been tracking this season, Sabalenka really did come into her own again in Madrid, making the final, and she's still going strong in Rome. And so 1 and 2, Swiatek, Sabalenka. This is the closest I have ever seen Sabalenka come to Swiatek. Absolutely love how Swiatek's been playing. Super rock solid. Sabalenka does have a different game though, and it's very threatening to Swiatek, and this is actually starting to show that there's a rivalry here that is getting very interesting. So that's very noteworthy. All right, that wraps up Madrid for the WTA Tour. Other noteworthy results I want to touch on is St. Malo in France. So it's a lower tournament, and it was underway during Madrid. So a few players that are noteworthy to touch on, say Arango. So I've touched on her key progressions. First round win here. Other noteworthy players that we've got here, Monet, she's had a rankings progression. Cornet here as well, and this is 3rd round result, but first round, so round of 32 kick things off to begin with. Okay, let's progress forward, and noteworthy, we've got Seville actually fell in the round of 16 to Naif. Sierra fell to Boysen. and tracking forwards even more so. Round of 16, Cornet had a very good win. Arango fell to Ponce. Monet fell to Volnets. Preston fell to Stearns. And Shemanovic fell to Paquet. More noteworthy, Volnets fell to Boyson, Stearns fell to Paquet, Cornet with a very good win in the quarterfinals, and Burrell, the number 1 seed, fell to Nerf. Other noteworthy is Cornet made the semi-finals, fell to Boyson, Paquet defeated Nerf, and the finals here was Boyson over Paquet. So that's 2 players, a very small event, but Boyson with that win is then one to watch. So that was Saint Malo in France. The other smaller event that was underway was in Catalonia, so the Catalonia Open. So let's start from the initial. Navarro was the number 1 seed here, and we know how well she's been tracking. Very good first round win over Pera. Sheriff, so you've heard me mention her name and how she's been tracking forward. 3 sets over Sasnovich. Rus has been very good this season. First round over Rakiamova. Other noteworthy, we had Kenin in action here. So bigger names, but still a very small scale event. So really good, I think, to get let's say a couple of extra wins under your belt. So she had a very good win over Borio Escohela. I apologize for that pronunciation. Bogdan over Paredes Diaz 1-1. Osorio over Bjorklund 4-1, and then there was a retirement. Fretch over Papa Mikhail 2-4. Navarro clean sweep again. Siniakova clean. Fretch clean. All of these wins. Osiero 3 sets there. Very interesting scoreline. 6-love 1-6 6-1. Bogdan fell to Sheriff. Kenin fell to Kruger. That's an interesting one there. Radinovic retired over Maristan Zulieta de Reles. That was 6-5. So that's an interesting. And Rus, very good win over Erika Ondriva 4-0. All right, quarterfinal stage. Fretch fell to Osorio. Rus fell to Madison Zuleta de Reles. That's a tongue twister for me. Siniakova over Kruger in 3 sets. Sheriff got a walkover over Navarro. So semi-final stage, Siniakova over Osorio, Sheriff over Madison Zulieta de Redes. And in the finals, Sheriff fell to Siniakova. This is why Sheriff, let's keep an eye on how she's been tracking with her ranking. And then we've got Siniakova, 3 sets here with the win, but noteworthy for her ranking. All right, before we head over to Rome, we are going to head straight on over to the ATP Tour, look at the top 100 and how Madrid's been tracking before we finish today with Rome. All right, noteworthy players inside the top 200. Polmans has regressed 22 points to 197 in the world. Raonic, look at him here, a slight progression of 3 places to 196. Denis Novak, 192 in the world, 13 places of a progression. Wow. Okay, how is this? This is very good. 187 in the world. Tristan Schulkate, 54 places. That's a very good progression there. That is one to keep an eye on, a very significant leap for the 23-year-old. All right, let's track forward here, looking for some big leaps. Here we go. 46 places to 172 in the world is Alejandro Moro Canas, the 23-year-old Spaniard. Alexander Richard, 30 years of age, from Switzerland. He's at 171 in the world. So we've got some very significant jumps here. I'm looking for some more standouts inside this ranking range. Kudla's firm at 161 in the world. Other big ones, I'm looking for those noteworthy key progressions. Hassan's up 12 places, 147 in the world. Dominic Stricker, he's back 20 places. Schwartzman steady there at 142. I think Schwartzman, this could be his last season as well. There's been a number of players touching on their last season that it has been actually a bit tricky to keep up with them all. Lloyd Harris is up 21 places to 128 in the world. Interesting fact here about Harris, is South African, but a couple of seasons ago, he did make the round of 16, and I think it was at the Australian Open, but he has not been able to, say, maintain that level of play. And that's why when we're looking at Grand Slams, key metrics, round of 16s, it's very interesting when we're looking at performance metrics and rankings. Shapovalov, he's up 6 places to 126. Looks like this is going to improve, which is great. We know Dennis is a former top 10 player. He has been derailed somewhat the last, 2 seasons, but he has been able to string a number of wins together over the last fortnight. So it'll be very interesting, especially after the French, if he cracks back into the top 100. Bagnis, the 34-year-old from Argentina, is up 17 places to 119 in the world. And I think that really surmises the top, say, 100 to 200. I'm going to say there's around 6 players there that were very significant, noteworthy progressions, a bit less than the WTA Tour. So that's what when we're looking at those percentages, we can say that 6% of 100 players within this ranking range that have made more significant progressions. And that's why these percentages really do matter, and that they really can set up some very profound insights and implications and correlations as well with the players' performances and noteworthy progressions, and who's more likely to crack into the top 100. And then we get towards, say, top 80, top 50, and so on. Okay, top 100 now, tracking forwards, here we go. Garin, former top 20 player, he's had a significant regression the last 2 seasons. He is back 8 places and he begins number 100 in the world. Kokkinakis is back 1, so 94 in the world. Fognini, he's up to 92 in the world. Kokorovic, 25-year-old American, is 89 in the world. Wawrinka's holding steady at 87. Karatsev, he's back 38 places to 86 in the world. Ultima's back 17 places, 78 in the world. Murray's taken a hit, back 20 places to 77 in the world. Kazooks is holding solid at 75. Corrier's up 9 to 74. Nakashima's up 9 to 72 in the world. We've got more progressions, I would say, here in contrast to the WTA, which is somewhat interesting, but by no means concrete correlation in no way, shape or form. Menzik, the 18-year-old Czech, 9 places up to 65 in the world. Thiago Seyboth Wild's up to 61 in the world. Looking for some more, let's say, significant bumps here. Eubanks just 1, 43 in the world. Poprin's up 4, 42. Leonard Struff, he is back 17 places to 41 in the world. Monfils is up to 38 in the world. And Naldi's back 1, 37 in the world. All right, we've got Navone is up 10, 31 in the world. Mercedes steady at 29 in the world. Quarters back 1, 27. Here we go, getting to the nitty gritty. TFO is back 4 places, 25, but I'd say he's relatively holding steady there. We know TFO has been closer to the top 10, and if not, just briefly inside the top 10. Let's see if his performance begins to better correlate with his ranking, and he tracks closer towards, say, inside the top 20, and potentially closer towards the top 10. However, his performance, of his level of play with his results, somewhat obviously do align with his current ranking. He has not been playing, let's say, the same level of play he was this time last year. Felix Auger-Aliassime, after his standout performance in Madrid, he has cracked the top 30 again and gone one better to crack the top 20, up 15 places to 20 in the world, which is really sensational. sensational for him. He's only 23 years of age, former top 10 player. He really did take a hit in the rankings, and he's been hovering outside the top 30 for some time. So breaking back into the top 20 is incredibly, really solid for him. Tommy Paul, steady at 16. Humbert's back 1 at 15. Shelton's at 1 at 14. Fritz is steady at 13. I'm going to say he's potentially within reach of the top 10 again after how he's been performing the last 2 weeks. Rune, he's still at 12. He has not been progressing as steadily as I would like to see. He has been taking some more earlier round losses. Somewhat surprising, but also not that surprising. So his ranking potentially will take somewhat of a hit, potentially back to 15, 16. I wouldn't be surprised to see that next week. Dimonor, 11 in the world. So he's holding very steady there. He did take quite a substantial hit, I would say, this week in that result. We will get to that later, but he has been very steady there. Let's remember Alex is only 25 years of age and he is at a peak. This is actual optimal placing, optimal time for Alex to take that next step, to move that baseline more firmly inside towards the top 10. That said, the current top 10 have been performing more so, I would say, the last 2 to 3 weeks than previously. Dimitrov, Hercax, Tsitsipas. So we've got 10, 9 and 8 there, very solid. And interestingly, Rudd and Tsitsipas were towing the line, making those finals back to back, going piece to piece. However, Rudd has actually been falling earlier the last fortnight. Tsitsipas has been holding his own more so. Interesting, both of them, and I think we forget, are both only 25 years of age. Tsitsipas, really, we know they've been around for some time now, but Tsitsipas really has been making a more positive progression, which is very interesting to see, because earlier this season he really wasn't. But given the last 3 weeks, Tsitsipas is really finding form for the French that puts him, I would say, potentially in contention with, say, 4 other players. Hercax is definitely up there, and I'm going to say Medvedev, although he has fallen short. Alcaraz has fallen short. He has been sidelined along with Sinner. So we haven't really been able to see their results. I will touch on Madrid shortly though. Djokovic as well has been taking those earlier round losses that I don't think we are used to seeing, especially that he hasn't been making, say, the semi-final to final stage of these bigger events. All right, that wraps up the rankings for the ATP Tour. So let's head straight on over to Madrid, and we are up to the quarterfinals. So we're going to touch on the quarterfinals. There are no other, say, smaller events like the WTA Tour has had over the last fortnight. So after wrapping up Madrid, we are going to head straight into Rome. Right, noteworthy performers that we've got quarterfinals. Sinner, Ogor, Alisame. Ogor Alisame did get a number of walkovers / retirements for Madrid. Sinner, he did have to withdraw. So we don't have that data to look at how he's been tracking, which is somewhat, I think, disappointing, but we want Sinner to get better. Nonetheless, he has been tracking very favorably in contrast to, say, the other 3, Alcaraz and Djokovic. Sinner is definitely tracking more favorably, but we want him to be healthy. On the other side of that, we've got Alcaraz and Rublev in the quarterfinals. Rublev did defeat Alcaraz though, so that was 4-6, 6-3, 6-2. So we know Alcaraz, that is somewhat of a regression for him, but a very good win for Rublev. Madrid was definitely a standout performance for Rublev, probably his best performance this season. He has been playing quite well, but when we're looking at clay and we're looking at the caliber of his opponents, That's an absolutely standout win, especially taking Alcaraz to 3 sets and walking away with the win. Fritz, a very good win over Serralundo. That was 6-1, 3-6, 6-3, quarterfinals. Medvedev fell to Lecheka, 6-4, 0-0. So Medvedev did retire there. I'm not too sure what the ailment or reason was for, but a very good standout performance for Lecheka. He did have to retire against Ogor Elisame in the semi-finals. So Felix really does have, I think, many walkovers / retirements courtesy to his progression and that rankings ascension. So it's very interesting to see how his level of play will track, if he's going to be able to maintain this new ranking high, especially let's say ranking high for the past 2 seasons, or if he will track back and regress, say around 30 in the world, because his new ranking high is definitely courtesy of a number of walkovers. Fritz and Rublev were in the other semi-final, and Rublev 6-4, 6-3. So that was a very good win for him. And then we know the final results. Rublev, he got the title over Ogor Elisame, 4-6, 7-5, 7-5. But what that scoreline tells me from Felix is that he was able to take a top 10 player to 3 solid sets. He took the first set and then 7-5, 7-5 to Rublev. That's a really solid performance, and why that really does insinuate and suggest that Felix is here to stay inside the top 20. However, the next few weeks will definitely tell its own story. All right, let's head straight on over to Rome. Let's have a look at the first round WTA Tour. We'll go a little bit deeper and then we'll track back over to the ATP Tour. Okay, we are going to dig in deep and look at all of these matches, beginning to the end of the first and second rounds. Pera over Dolhide 7-6, 6-3. Putintseva over Trevisan 3-4. Kerber, a very good win over Davis 6-1, 6-love. That was absolutely solid. Schmidlova over Sasnovich. Actually, it was Sasnovich with the win, 6-2, 7-6. That was actually a very close tiebreak. Wang over Yuan 4-6, 6-1, 6-2. Osorio over Rus. So remember those smaller events, both of these players were tracking favorably, but Osorio got the win in 3 sets, 4-6, 6-3, 6-4. All right, Frontrunners 3 sets over Townsend, 3-6, 6-2, 6-love. Bogdan with a very good win over Fernandez first round, 6-4, 6-love. French. This is why these earlier tournaments, the smaller round tournaments, are very insightful, because we know how French was tracking. So a very good first round win over Kruger, 7-6, 6-3. Avanesian over Buska, 6-7, 6-love, 7-5. That is a very interesting scoreline. Badosa over Andreeva. This was a very good match, especially granted Andreeva's inside the top 40. She did have that really good performance in Madrid, but Badosa, despite being ranked, I think it was 126 in the world with that recent rankings regression, a very good win over Andreeva, 2-3. Schneider. Now we know Schneider already has a title this season over Minen, 2-3. Maria over Frodotova, 7-6, 3-6, 6-2. Osaka, very good win first round, 7-6, 6-1. Courtesy, we know, of that rankings progression that she currently has. Stefani over Pagnetti, 7-5, 6-3. Rogers over Pagato, 1-0. Now we've got Grachiva over Sara, 1-3. Bekic fell to Sorenko, 6-3, 3-6, 7-6. That tiebreak was close. Lynette, good win over Zhu, 3-2. Sheriff, so remember she made the finals of that smaller event, but she had a good win over Martic, 2-2. Just a few more left in the first round. We've got Blinkova over Parry, 2-3. Kokureto over Zazua, 4-6, 7-5, 6-3. Siniakova over Brankioki, 4-2. Begu over Masarova, 5-7, 6-3, 6-4. A couple more players. Kenin over Bronzetti, 3-2. Shmakova over Padone, 4-1. Sorobez Tormo over Podoroska. That's a very good win. 4-3. Potapova over Wang, 1-5. Finishing up here, Irani as a very good first round win over Anisimova, 4-6, 6-2, 6-1. And we've already touched on her rankings progression. Torsen over Seville, 2-3. Seigman over Karl, 2-6, 6-4, 6-4. And Volnyets over Wang, 7-6, 6-1. Wow. Okay, let's head on straight on over to the second round here where we're getting, it's getting interesting. Swiatek, so we've got the seeded players with the buys the first round in action. So 6-love, 6-3 over Pera. Putintseva over Stevens, 6-3, 6-2. That really underscores her rankings progression. Kerber, very good win over Kudermetova, the 17th seed, 6-3, 6-love. Sasnovich over Alexandrova, 6-love, 6-1. Haddad Maia over Wang, she was pushed to the brink, 4-6, 6-3, 6-4. Keys, very solid over Osorio. So remember Osorio, rankings progression, even though she's ranked, I think, outside the top 100, she has been tracking very good this season. But Keys, 6-love, 4-6, 6-3. So Steyer over Frutofatova, 7-5, 6-love. Vondrasova over Bogdan, 6-2, 3-6, 6-4. Gorf over Fretch. Now remember Fretch with the lower tournaments, how she's been tracking with a couple of extra wins under her belt. Gorf, definitely too good, 3-3. Christian over Avanesian, 5-7, 6-2, 6-2. Navarro, Felton, Badosa, and this was very good. So let's recall, Navarro peaked inside the top 20, career high a few weeks ago. She's 21 in the world, the 21st seed, really is rock solid. Badosa's ranking has slipped, but now she's got those 2 big wins in Rome under her belt from, let's say, a top 20 player. Yes, Navarro's 21, but 1-6, 6-4, 6-2. This definitely will help Badosa's ranking track closer towards the top 100 when the new rankings come out next week. Schneider, now remember, has that title over Samsonova, 1-3. Very good win. Kazatkina over Maria, 7-5, 6-1. And this is a standout match here. Osaka over Kostyuk, 6-3, 6-2. Kostyuk, 19th seed, 20 in the world. Absolutely stellar season to date. So Osaka with that 3-2 win over a top 20 player really does position Osaka for what I've touched on, I think, earlier, so the beginning of today's episode, that potentially definitely is poised to make the round of 16 at the French Open if she continues tracking this way. We've got Noskova with a win over Stefani, 3-7-6. Zheng over Rogers, 6-2, 6-love. Very solid for Zheng there. Sakari over Gracheva, 2-2. Kalaniya over Tsurenko, 2-love. Unfortunately, Tsurenko retired that one. Azarenka, very solid against Lynette, but this was tough. 6-7, 6-4, 6-3. Sheriff. Now remember how I've noted Sheriff has been tracking forwards this season. She took Paolini to 3 sets and got the win. That is an absolutely peak for Sheriff's performance, not just this season, but for, I would arguably say, her career is the highest win for her career. 7-6, 2-6, 6-4. Collins over Blinkova, 6-4, then retired from Blinkova. Cocchioretto fell to Garcia, 6-2, 7-6. Mertens over Siniakova, 6-1, 6-4. Doden retired against Bagu when she was up 5-2. Jabeur, this is a very big one. Kenin with the win, 7-5, 2-6, 6-4. Really underscoring how Jabeur has been regressing this season, but she's got a number of points that have been allowing her to hold on to her top 10 ranking. But Jabeur really did, her game, that level of play, those metrics really are suffering. Those 7 keys are suffering. That 8th key has been displaced. And for a top 10 player, if Jabeur keeps this level of play up, she will regress outside of the top 10, potentially after the French Open. That said, she really is ahead with the points. If she did not have the points to her name, Jabeur would be closer to top 20 in the world. So we're really counting on, especially the French, for Jabeur to bring her A game if she wants to hold on to her top 10 ranking. But that is definitely a stellar performance for Kenin to take Jabeur 7-5, 2-6, 6-4. Shmankova 6-4, 7-6 over Bulta. Pavlyuchenkova fell to Sorobes Tormo 6-3, 1-6, 7-5. Ostapenko over Potapova 6-4, 6-2. Svitolina over Irani. This was brutal. 6-love, 6-2. Kalinskaya over Torsen 6-1, 6-2. Yastremska over Sagman 4-6, 7-5, 6-2, and Sabalenka over Volnets 4-6, 6-3, 6-2. So it was really pushed there. All right, we're going to pause the WTA Tour on the first 2 rounds of Rome. Let's let Rome wrap up, and next week we will go from the 3rd round onwards to completion. So let's track on over to the ATP Tour now and look at the first 2 rounds, because there's so much I think to cover, especially in today's episode. And we know Rome is still underway, and there are some really exciting matches. Though to keep pace, I want to balance today out to make sure we finish off with those first 2 rounds of the ATP Tour. All right, let's jump straight on in. Mute over Sorfelin at 3 sets, 3-6, 7-6, 6-2. Hartmann over Menzik, 3-2. That's a very good win. Okay, Gigante over Ziaperi, both wildcards, 7-6, 6-4 for Gigante. Shevchenko over Morozin, 3-2. Kotov over Mitchelson, 1-1. Zhang over Gallen, 6-2, 7-5. Monteiro over Monfils, he was a qualifier, very good win, 2-5. Kekmanovic over Nakashima, 4-4. That is actually a very solid result there. Schwartzman fell to Vucic, 2-2. Shapovalov fell to Darderi, 6-7, 6-3, 7-6. That's a tough one. Passaro, the qualifier, over Rinder Kesh. How's this for a scoreline? 6-7, 7-5, 7-6. That is an absolutely brutal first round result. Passaro, the qualifier, that is sensational for him to get through to the second round. Borges over Martinez, 6-7, 6-4, 7-6. Other wins we've got, Evans fell to Fognini. It's a very good win for Fognini, the wildcard, 6-4, 3-6, 6-2. Kaboli over Mate, 4-2. Eubanks fell to Atme, the qualifier, 4-4. Nishioka over Offner in 3 sets, 6-3, 2-6, 7-6. Wow. Struff over Cashin, 4-4. Muna over Rinky there, 4-5. Monero de Alboren fell to Vandershoep, 7-6, 6-7, 7-6. Wow, that is a huge scoreline, similar to the other scoreline. Very tough one for the qualifier, Monero de Alboren to go out in, but well done to Vandershoep to get over line there. O'Connell fell to Carabella's Baena, 6-7, 5 love, and then where there was a retirement. That's a very tough one. These results, and when you see these very close matches in the first round, first to second round results, this is where the rankings don't always correlate. Granted, there's a stellar performance. This is when we know when those ranking points are not picked up, but the performances were very even. Players noteworthy to watch and keep an eye out for future events, because that ranking, they did not benefit. Granted, there was a loss there, but when they're able to push a player that closely, they are definitely noteworthy to keep an eye on. Nopolano over Wolf, 6-2, 7-6. Analdi over Mayo, 3-6, 7-5, 6-4. Muller over Fuchsovich, 4-6, 7-6, 6-2. Giron over Russavori, 3-6, 6-3, 6-3. Bergs fell to Nadal. This was so incredibly exciting to see. Without, let's say, the nervousness of Madrid, seeing Nadal back in action and just wanting more. But Nadal with a very good win over Bergs, but it was tight. 4-6, 6-3, 6-4. Similar to last week's episode and the week before, it's just an absolute privilege to see Nadal back in action. Sabo Wild over Barretti, 4-2. Lachovic over Sonegro, 6-3, 6-7, 6-3. Ultima fell to Nardi, 4-4. McDonald fell to Karatsev, 4-6, 6-3, 6-4. Kopa over Vasori, 4-3. Finishing up the first round results here, Mitrovic, the qualifier, over Poprin, 3-2. And Draper over Koric, 5-1. Interesting fact, Koric once upon a time was ranked inside the top 20. However, he really has struggled to maintain that inside his career. However, he has comfortably maintained his ranking inside the top 100 for some time now. All right, let's dive into the second round results for Madrid. So the seeded players that got a bye first round, we know they're first up in action. Here we've got Djokovic over Mute, 3-1. Now, noteworthy, I'm going to pause this week at the second round, similar to what I've just touched on for the WTA Tour, because we've got some very good results unfolding this week. But it's important to touch on, we know that Djokovic had an unfortunate incident after this match, but it's a very good win for him. Great to see him back in action, 3-1. However, let's look at his results over the last, I'm going to say 4 to 6 weeks, and how it tracks with his performance, fortunately, but also unfortunately for Rome. Tabilo over Halfman, 7-6. That was a close tiebreaker, but noteworthy, Tabilo is 29th seed. We know the result, but we're going to pause there. All right, Gigante fell to Sorondo, 1-3. Shevchenko fell to Kakanakov, 4-4. Shelton, very good win over Kotov, 4-6, 6-3, 6-4. Zhang over Manarino, 1-3. Manarino has had a pretty good season, or especially the last 2 to 3 weeks. So that's a very good win for Zhang to have. Montero over Thompson. And now Montero's a qualifier. Thompson has been tracking forward, 32nd seed, but 6-1, 6-3 to Montero. Very good win. How's this? Kekmanovic over Rudd. Love 6, 6-4, 6-4. So Rudd came out firing to get that first set. 6 love. Kekmanovic, he stayed with him, 4-4. Very good result for Kekmanovic. This really, I think, talks to, when we're looking at the rankings, Rudd and Tsitsipas, how Rudd has had that earlier exit in contrast to Tsitsipas, and why Tsitsipas is now favoured over Rudd, given the French being around the corner. That said, let's see how the next couple of weeks pave out. Well, the next 2 weeks, in fact, before the French gets underway. Zverev over Vukic, 6 love, 6-4. Darderi over Navone, 3-2. Passaro over Greekenspor, 4-6, 6-3, 7-6. Bublik, an early loss to Borges, 4-4. Fritz over Fognini, 3-4. Quarter over Caboli, 7-6, 4-6, 6-4. Mazzetti falling early to Altmani, the qualifier, 7-5, 1-0. So Mazzetti is obviously withdrawn / retired from that match. Dimitrov over Nishioka, 7-5, 6-4. Tsitsipas over Struff, 6-7, 6-4, 6-4. That was incredibly tight. Similar, let's say, to Rudd's earlier match. However, Tsitsipas was able to hold his own and walk away with that win, but very close against Struff. And we know also it was only a matter of weeks ago where Struff landed his first title, so that was not an easy match for Tsitsipas, but it's very solid to see Tsitsipas with that win. Norrie over Muna, 6-3, 1-6, 6-3. Auger Alisame over I will try again. Van der Zandschulp, 6-1, 7-6. So we've just touched on in Madrid, Van der Zandschulp had a relatively good performance. So Auger Alisame with this win is, I'm going to say, a very solid one, despite Van der Zandschulp needing to qualify. Dibanor over Cabala Spaina, 3-2. Napolitanto over Shang, 6-7, 6-1, 6-love. Wow, Shang was a lucky loser, was able to take Napolitano, was a wild card all the way to get that tiebreak for the first set, but then Napolitano 6-1, 6-love. That is absolutely brutal. But look, good for Shang to walk away with that tiebreaker and to build on that. Jarry over Arnaldi, 6-2, 7-6. Fils falling to Muller, 7-5, 6-3. Rublev over Giron, 3 tight sets. So after last week with that title, 3 sets this week in Rome, 5-7, 6-4, 7-5. Hurkacz, this was a very good win for Hurkacz. Nadal, 6-1, 6-3. We know Hurkacz has, I think, at least 1 title to his name so far this season. He is one of the top 10 players that has been aligning with his ranking so far this season. This was going to be a very tough match for Nadal either way. Would have loved to see it go to 3 sets, but this result really does suggest that Nadal is not playing in line with that top 10 ranking. But that said, we are on clay. Hurkacz played well. Nadal by no means played at his peak. So it'll be very interesting to see how Nadal performs over the next 2, 3, potentially 4 weeks. And if he does make the second week at Roland Garros. That said, we know that he is not at his peak. And for Hurkacz to have this win, 1-3 over Nadal, suggests that Hurkacz is playing very tightly, very solid, by no means in line with, say, a Sinner, Alcaraz, Djokovic at this stage, or Medvedev, I should say. But he has been tracking forward in line with potentially Tsitsipas and Rudd on clay. Tsitsipas more so. So it'll be very interesting also to see how Hurkacz continues to track over the next couple of weeks, and why I put Hurkacz up there to potentially make, let's say, the quarters to semi-finals of the French Open. Anything can happen, but he definitely has been performing, and his metrics do correlate with that type of outcome. Echeverry over Seyboth Wild, 6-3, 7-5. Baez over Lachovic, 7-6, 7-6. Rune over Nardi, 4-4. Paul over Karatsev, 4-2. TFO falling to Kopa, 4-2. Davidovich for Kina falling to Medvedev, 7-6, 6-4. And to wrap up the second round results, we've got Medvedev over Draper, 7-5, 6-4. Okay, that wraps up Madrid. We've wrapped up Madrid. This wraps up Rome for this week for rounds 1 and 2. Given that Rome is underway and we're at the round of 16 to quarterfinal stage, for both WTA and ATP tours. We're going to wrap that up next week so we really can dig a little bit deeper into these insights and the players that are tracking, since the French is only a matter of 2 weeks away. So next week we'll edge a little bit closer with those results to better position our players with who's tracking, who isn't, and we will have new rankings out next week to correlate better with these results, especially when we are looking at tracking towards that top 10 tennis ranking, but more so players that are primed for the French, so for the second Grand Slam of the season, why these players in the first and second rounds potentially are noteworthy or potentially not so much come the French, but we'll have more data to go off and be able to correlate, in contrast to not having access to the latest rankings and those results come next week. So there is a method to the madness. Hopefully you are familiar with that saying. That's a colloquial term, so tongue-in-cheek there. All right, that's a lot. Before we get off track, we've summed up, especially I think the biggest results, Madrid, with the latest rankings that have come out last week. We've touched on the newer results this week in Rome. We do have a number of players that have been sidelined. We've touched on players who are finishing up their season, some who have already finished up, but really I think some noteworthy results, some really tight-knit results that we can, I think, keep a close eye on, especially this type of time of season. And hopefully you can hear it, my enthusiasm and my excitement, my anticipation for the French Open, and I'm really looking forward to how that unfolds, how the metrics really play out with the data to correspond with the rankings and the results, and the story that really has been unfolding, and why I'm trying my best to hold back this week to really, I think, lay it all out next week, especially when we know 50% of the top 10 players rankings are on the line, and how exciting it really does get when we're tracking these players towards not only a top 10 tennis ranking, how the current top 10 are performing, and the story again that's being told for the round of 16 through to the semi-finals and further come the French. But let's see how Rome finishes off, paves out next week. And if anything from today, have a look at the blogs, the rankings in conjunction with these results, track back to earlier episodes, and you really will see why some of these players that I've touched on really aren't surprising, and why 50% of them actually will track closer towards the top 10, and others will stay inside the top 10, and why I think the storyline that continues to unfold really is rich and backed by the data and complemented with top 10 tennis rankings. Thank you so much for joining us today. That really was a tongue twister summary, and I repeated the story a number of times in that rant because it is really important. Inadvertently, that is what's been happening over the last couple of weeks, planning and leading up to the French, and I'm really already looking forward to next week to share even more, and I think the applicability and the direct application of these results, those inadvertent storylines that really will contribute to how the rankings unfold over the next couple of weeks. Look, to grab your copy of my new release, How to Develop a Top 10 Tennis Ranking, jump on over to AMA International or head directly to Amazon, irrespective where you are based in the world. It's readily available. For any comments or questions, head to AMA or Topic Thread, the social platform set on data privacy. To interact with Beyond Top 10 Tennis, head on over to Twitter, Instagram or YouTube. To catch up on our blogs, head on over to AMA International and look for our blog tab, or head on over to Medium. And as always, I'll leave all the links in the episode notes. For something different, head on over to Pink Octopus Books, where my fictional release is. For something left of field, visit Sprout for some random polls. And of course, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, like, share, and all of the above would be absolutely phenomenal. For those of you who are interested, we do have scholarships available on AMA International, as well as options to work with me exclusively to optimize your performance and to nudge you closer towards that top 10 tennis ranking. So don't be shy and come and say hi. On that note, thank you so much for listening. I am so incredibly grateful. I am your host, Dr. Ashley Morgan Berge, and this is Beyond Top 10 Tennis, and I'll see you next time.